I didn't raise my voice when the HOA president slammed a copy of their so-called community water access policy on the table. I just slid my permit across to their lawyer, the one issued by the State Department of Natural Resources. Stamped and signed, Haibing Misole. Non-transferable water rights. Tolat. Well, since 1986. The room went silent. The president's jaw twitched, and I sat back, sipping my coffee, while their lawyer leaned in, skimmed the permit, and quietly muttered, "You don't have authority here." I'd waited months for that moment. They thought cutting the lock was power. They had no idea what kind of ground they were standing on. It's strange looking back, because when I first moved here, none of this was supposed to happen. I didn't move into the neighborhood for control or conflict. I moved here to step away from all of that. The property wasn't even glamorous. It was a piece of land my uncle left me a little dry, a little stubborn, tucked up against the county line. What it did have was a shared well that had been dug decades ago, back when neighbors weren't fighting each other but pulling together just to have water. For me, inheriting the place was more about the simplicity of it all. I pictured weekends patching up the old fence, reading on the porch, maybe fixing the shed into a workshop. It wasn't peace I was chasing so much as predictability, and for a while, that's what I had. The only sound at night was crickets and the slow turn of that old pump when I drew water. The first sign of trouble came in the form of a letter taped to my front gate. The HOA claimed I was misusing community resources because I had installed a new lock on the well house. They said the well was shared under HOA authority and that I had violated access agreements. Except the lock wasn't new. It was the same rusting padlock that had been there since before the HOA even existed. I replaced it with a weatherproof one because the original was one rainstorm away from falling apart. At first, I thought it was just a misunderstanding. They didn't know the well wasn't theirs. They didn't realize my uncle had secured the water rights decades ago, long before these people put up their vinyl fences and community standards. But then, a week later, I found their maintenance guys had cut my new lock off and installed their own. I tried the civil route, as any reasonable person would. I sent emails explaining the situation, attaching copies of the county record that showed the well wasn't listed under HOA jurisdiction. I even invited the president over for coffee to talk it through. Instead, I got a formal violation notice in the mail demanding I restore unrestricted HOA access and threatening daily fines of $100. The letter didn't even acknowledge the record's ID attached. They weren't interested in the facts. They were interested in control. The more I tried to reason, the more aggressive they became. A second notice claimed I was endangering community health by hoarding water. A third said they were escalating to legal action. By that point, I had stopped being confused and started being very, very focused. That's when I stopped writing emails and started digging. Nights that used to be spent reading on the porch turned into nights poring over file boxers and scanned documents. I went to the county clerk's office, pulled survey maps, and traced the property lines back before the HOA was even incorporated. I found the original easement agreement, handwritten and signed in 1972, that gave my uncle the right to install, maintain, and control the well, in exchange for letting neighbors draw water under his conditions. The kicker came when I found the state-issued water rights permit. In my state, water rights are property rights. They can't be overridden by HOAs, not even by county zoning boards. The permit was still valid in my name now, and it clearly stated the well was under private control, with limited use allowed for adjoining landowners, but under the permit holder's discretion. That was the trump card. Of course, it wasn't just paperwork. The HOA's hostilities spread in smaller, quieter ways. Neighbors I'd waved to stopped making eye contact. One man who used to chat with me about fishing crossed the street instead. My partner asked if we should move somewhere less toxic. My kids stopped wanting to play outside because the bored people kept glaring. It wasn't loud harassment, but it was isolating, and I let it harden me. Every night I stayed up digging deeper into the archives. It was with the thought that if they wanted a fight, they would get one, but only on paper, only with the rules they thought they owned. When the day of the board meeting came, I didn't storm in. I showed up early.com with a folder under my arm. I let them rant first. They accused me of tampering with community infrastructure, of being selfish, of refusing to follow the rules everyone else agreed to. I didn't argue. I just placed the permit on the table. Their lawyer picked it up, frowned, and started flipping pages. When he got to the line stating exclusive beneficial use by permit holder, his face dropped. The president tried to cut in, blustering about community interpretation, but the lawyer shook his head. He leaned in and said flatly, "This supersedes HOA policy." That moment of silence, that sharp, humiliating stop, was worth every hour I spent in dusty county archives. They had cut my lock, but I had cut their authority. The aftermath was swift. The fines were dropped, quietly, with no apology. Their lock was removed from the well house, and mine was put back. A month later, the HOA board president resigned, citing personal reasons, though everyone knew why. A couple of other board members followed soon after. The new leadership has been much quieter. They don't look my way at meetings, and they certainly don't bring up the well. Neighbors who once ignored me now wave again, though some can't quite meet my eyes. That's fine. I didn't fight for friendship. I fought for what was mine. These days, the well house sits just as it always has, with my lock on it, humming quietly through the summers. The HOA doesn't bother me anymore. They know better. I don't need thanks or apologies. What I need is exactly what I have now. Silence. When I turn on the tap, I hear the water run, steady and clear. And know it is mine by right. They thought they could cut me out. All they managed to do was teach me how deep my roots really went. Now, when I drive past the board members who once threatened me, some wave stiffly and some look away. Either way, it's quiet again.